I'm completely dazed. I might as well be speaking Klingon. These two guys are standing over me, pointing at this blueprint and spitting out words like bullets from an assault rifle. I grunt and nod, doing everything I can to maintain the facade of understanding. While they're detailing the Byzantine works of the building, I'm trying my damnedest to figure out what this one symbol means. I want to ask them what it is. You must have been in a situation like this when you didn't ask them right away. Right away it would have been okay. But now they've been talking a little bit too long. You hesitated too long. If you ask them now, they'll say, "What are you wasting all this time for?" What am I going to do? I get an idea. Maybe it's a valve. Take my finger and I put it down on one of the mysterious little crosses in the middle of one of the blueprints on page 3 and I say, "What happens if this valve gets stuck?" Figuring they're going to say, "That's not a valve, sir. That's a window." This isn't a story from my own life, but it could be. It's a universal kind of feeling I think that we've all experienced. This temptation to kind of bullshit your way through a conversation when you don't know what's going on and to just kind of grace on. And my thinking with this was always that like, geez, if I was smarter, maybe if I was more intelligent, this would never happen to me. And it's kind of, I guess that would be my way of being invulnerable if I was intelligent enough that this wouldn't happen to me. But reading this story, this guy is very far from being an idiot. This guy is Richard Feynman, the great genius scientist, Nobel Prize winner, and just kind of a polymath of not just in the sciences, but also just in life. He lived so many lives and is someone who really fits with the ethos of the living philosophy of embodying your philosophy in life, and he's just got such an entertaining way with life, and I'd highly recommend his autobiography, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. Really just to see the stories, the inside of the physics world, from the Manhattan Project to his bongo playing and taking part in a band in Carnival down in Brazil and learning to speak different languages and getting into picking up women. And it's a fantastic, multifaceted kind of story of a really fascinating personality. And the story that I just read is from that book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. And it just goes to show Feynman, who's one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, even he ran into this same problem. So it's not something we can evolve through intelligence. Again, I think it's something we need to embrace the vulnerability of. And that's what I want to explore in today's episode of The Living Philosophy. I want to explore how we can go the opposite way. Maybe we should, instead of avoiding looking stupid, maybe we need to embrace it. The counter lesson to the Feynman story comes from another great man in history, a guy called Napoleon Bonaparte, who almost took over the entirety of Europe and was just this amazing, the greatest general of all time by all accounts, by statistics, in terms of the number of victories he had, the number of battles he fought. So a really incredible general. And reading this fantastic biography of him called Napoleon the Great, there's a story in it that just clicked with me straight away, that just fascinated my mind. And this story is such a great counterpoint to the Feynman story, because we see another intelligent man but taking the exact opposite approach, which is something we can learn to love so much. So it's a week before he's about to set off on his Italian campaign. He's invited this old General Krieg, who knows a lot about military tactics, over to his house. He comes in, throws his hat down, sits down beside the old general and begins to blitz him with questions. And this is what one of his officers has to say, who was present at the time. Some of his questions showed such a complete ignorance of the most ordinary things that several of my comrades smiled. I was myself struck by the number of his questions, their order and their rapidity. But what struck me still more was the sight of a commander-in-chief, perfectly indifferent about showing his subordinates how completely ignorant he was of various points of a business, which the youngest of them was supposed to know perfectly. And what a brilliant story. The man is the general of the armies in Italy, and he's asking some really basic questions. And why? Because just because the people around you think that you know the answer, it doesn't mean you know the answer. It doesn't hold any currency on the battlefield if you've got this gap in your knowledge, but people think you don't have that gap in your knowledge. And so most of us would be afraid to ask. We'd be in that moment, we end up trapped in a situation like Feynman, and we're just like, oh God, I'm about to lose face here. But what we see with Napoleon, and I think what's going on in him, is it's a matter of mindset. His eye is on a bigger game. He's not worried about how he looks in the eyes of these people in the room, because he's not thinking about how he appears to them. He's thinking about something much bigger. And it reminds me of Nietzsche saying, he who has a why can handle almost any how. And it's about having this greater purpose, which makes all these smaller failures and inadequacies mean remain meaningless and just makes them disappear, because now you're dealing with something that's more important. You're thinking about something bigger. And I think that's what's going on with Napoleon there. He's thinking about a much bigger problem. He's thinking more about what happens if he loses the battle in Italy, or probably in his case, he's probably thinking about what happens if he wins. So his eyes are on a bigger game. And maybe that's something we all need to think about. We get bogged down in the minutiae of day to day. We begin to think of what other people are thinking about us and their opinions of us, and that keeps us in a smaller life. It keeps us caged into a smaller life, because we can't get out of that prison of what other people think, because you will always end up looking stupid. You will, if you put yourself out there, if you make yourself vulnerable, if you try and do something great, you have to expose yourself. That's the only way to do something great. You expose your weaknesses, and then you learn from those weaknesses. You balance out those weaknesses, and that makes you prepared for a greater game. So I think we've all been in the situation with Feynman, but I think that there's a lesson there we can take from Napoleon, and that's think about the bigger game, think about the bigger purpose in your life, and use that to drive you to get over the little things, to get over the little battles. Keep your eye on the war, and the little battles along the way will work themselves out. That's what I wanted to explore on today's episode of The Living Philosophy. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a like and consider subscribing if you're new to the channel. And yeah, other than that, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments if you have any thoughts, feedback or insights, and otherwise I shall see you next time. Thank you for watching.